So it's like I get that people can like steal words and kind of bullshit them, kind of like house music and a whole bunch of shit that has been stolen from black people. But you gotta just go, okay, you know what, you're right. This is the truth. It has been bastardized, and this is the version we refer to. But again, it has nothing to do. The true wokeness has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with LGBT. Honestly, if you're woke, ironically, if you're a woke black person, you're actually more anti-LGBT and more right-leaning as far as values is concerned. Ironically,
absolute bizarre statement to me.
that that's actually, yeah, you have more to do. If you think of the conscious community is more associated with that. But again, so
you're conscious of injustice, but only when it applies to your particular quote unquote oppressed group. But you don't recognize oppression in other groups as being valid either.
So, Tyler, you didn't listen to what I said earlier. I said specifically racial.
I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, so gotcha. So,
just an answer to my question without
so,
meta.
so I'm gonna go ahead. So I already answered specifically racial, but the conscious community does have a branch of people, but I don't expect you to understand that, right? And that's the whole thing about being woke. It's more esoteric than every fucking blue-haired white girl.
That doesn't answer my question at all.
If I said I already pointed out what it is.
Okay, so what you're missing out, Johnny, what you're missing out is he's saying, why is it ethical to only care about the injustice about your own group? Shouldn't one just care about injustice generally? Isn't there something evil about saying only my group's injustice matters? That is what he's asking.
I think injustice should matter, yes, but again, if you have, that's why there's different definitions for different things, right? I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. I'm pointing out this is what it is. And ironically, in the conscious community, granted there is a spectrum, but there are plenty of them that are very pro-black. There are plenty of them that are like, we're not really for the LGBT, we're for pro-family, which again, is generally more associated with conservative values. Yes, there are some that are more left-leaning, but again, the core of it is pro-family and pro-black people organizing, right? And it's being aware of what happens within the system. I don't know what else to say beyond that, right? Like, you can have different words for it. You see what I'm saying?
So someone asked me whether or not wokeness, like, what's good about wokeness? And listen, gay marriage, that's arguably woke. Being kind to trans people, it's arguably woke. Caring more about not raping on the margin is, like, woke. Those are all good things. But here's what's not good, extreme sanctimony, tabooing empirical claims, giving, like, white people original sin that they, like need to be, humiliated about. Not enjoying debate, having dogma, like those things are terrible, and I hate that, and it is characteristic of wokeness.
Wait, hold on, Sam. You don't think this is, I always find this strange coming from Jews. You don't think there needs to be a full mea culpa, like what the Germans did to you guys, and there was a full mea culpa? You don't think white people need to do that to black people? Are you insane?
No, Jesus Christ. This just to me this
Tyler,
sounds like
Sam.
Well, I think that white people do need to acknowledge slavery is horrible, and when I think about owning another human being, it's like it's almost hard for me to imagine me just like bossing someone around as if assuming that I can just do that to another person feels alien to me, and it is deeply evil. But there is some things that are different about the Nazi situation from the slavery one, which is what
hold on, I'm not comparing. Wait, hold on.
Yeah. So I was just
don't do that weird thing.
So one is that there's a fucking huge amount of white people who died in America to free the slaves. That's like one asymmetry. The second asymmetry is the fact that slavery was normal historically, like throughout all of history, and people try to downplay like Roman slavery and other kinds of slavery. They try to say that the antebellum South was like uniquely evil compared to like Roman slavery, but I just like don't think that being a slave in the salt mines of Carthage was like much better than being someone picking cotton in the South.
Yo, Sam, this is insane, dude. This is literally minimizing. Basically what you're doing right now is like Holocaust denial shit. Like, so basically you're trying to minimize what happened in American slavery, the responsibility of American whites. Can I do the same thing with Nazis did? Can I just minimize what Nazis did, Jews did? Because you're going to do that. What happened to blacks? Let me do the same thing. Can I do that?
Wait, do you think? Are you disagreeing that? Are you saying being?
I disagree with everything.
Are you saying that being a slave in the South now is better
concept. So first of all, let me say something. Are you aware of breeding farms? You know what a breeding farm is?
What is
Okay, I got you.
You know, the audio in the background, could you please turn that up?
Yeah, I got you. Okay. So for example, right?
You don't got me, bro. You gotta like turn off the background noise, please. Fucking
Chris was joking about discussing wokeness. They don't actually want.
Okay.
Well, now you got it, Mark.
Mark, be careful what you wish for when you're in a room called wokeness sucks and you ask about it. Like,
Yeah.
I do want to make like a terminological point though. Like, what they're Dunning is kind of narrowly right. Like the term wokeness has its roots like far earlier than people kind of probably aware. Like the according to Wikipedia, it actually goes back to the 30s.
It comes
But I
from the
think
black
the 70s and
community.
stuff it covered. Yeah, that's right. It came from the black community and only meant like awareness of like specifically racial discrimination, not with the kind of not with the connotation that no other discrimination matters, but that the term only covered that particular kind of discrimination in the early 2010s and late 2000s. I think wokeness kind of meant like awareness of social injustice and discrimination in general. And now it has this kind of loosey-goosey, like everything that's bad about the left, DEI sucks, kind of everything that's bad.
It's silly. It's like, how do you just can use it, and it's like it's bastardizing and it's gentrifying the word, and like that's the whole point about being woke. Like I said earlier, it's to be aware of bullshit. Like,
Yeah, hold on. This is just
really quick. I asked SPT how bad was it to be in a salt mine in Carthage, and it says you are likely stripped of your identity, tortured daily by your environment, destined for a slow, agonizing death. Few would escape, and fewer still would live long. It was the most dehumanizing, painful fates imaginable in the ancient world.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this, like, okay, I'm not
The same way, Sam, being a Jew in Poland in 1941, right? I doubt anybody would ever choose that fate as well.
Wait, hold on. So this is what we mean by, okay, now I'm going to just start calling you guys out, because this is sounding very racist here. So you guys doing this comparison thing about what's better. First of all, I'm empirically saying it wasn't. But however, that being said, I don't care about that argument. I care about one specific form of the argument. Is what you said about white people apologizing and being a part of the mea culpa, the word I use, in terms of the reckoning with black people. I'm saying this is an important part that needs to be done. You were denying that.
But how
Hold on, Tyler. So this.
How are any of us a part of that?
No, Tyler, because you want to.
We weren't even in this country.
This is some racist bullshit where you want to do some comparison between Jews and black people in terms of saying which one is worse. I'm saying something very simple. White people need to do a full mea culpa to black people. Do you agree with this, Tyler, or not?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you're a racist piece of shit. That's why.
No, I'm
you
no way racist. I would argue the opposite, that you're the racist, because you have labeled all white people as somehow being responsible for the plight of slaves. When my ancestors, my family wasn't even in this country until one generation ago. We were nowhere near America. My family was in Eastern Europe being enslaved by those same Nazis that you're talking about. I don't understand how I'm responsible for the plight of your ancestors.
Jews! Black Germans had you pay reparations to Jews. Was that fair to them?
Question. Hold on.
Was that fair to them?
How are my ancestors?
Was it fair to black Germans? No, stop.
No.
Tyler, was it fair to black Germans?
How are my ancestors? You're yelling and interrupting.
You don't want to answer.
How are my ancestors responsible for the oppression of your ancestors?
It's the government.
What do I have to apologize for?
It's the government that's.
What do I need to apologize for?
Stop, Taylor. It's the government. Just like the Japanese people when they got reparations, I wasn't responsible for that. But guess what? Black people still had to pay. You want to know another thing? When Italians got reparations, black people had to pay for that. I'm gonna tell you another thing. Black Germans had to pay reparations to you people because they paid it through their taxes, even though that had nothing to do with it. You guys, Jews got reparations when they come from Germany, and black Germans had to pay that. They came from the taxes. Are you retarded?
Is Tyler Jewish?
Even if he's not, regardless, I thought he was, but he may be not. Regardless of the point is this: Germans, black Germans, had to. Wait, no, stop.
oppression and enslavement and extermination
They wasn't.
of Jewish people, yeah.
But black servers that came out.
Were they part of Nazi society?
This is retarded. This again, no.
The point is, I think what he's trying to say is that they were part of, they were in the country, right?
No,
They were probably like
black, yeah.
marginalized, with no power, like they were at the receiving end of like Nazi domination, right? Because obviously the Nazis hated black people, right? Like Jesse Owens and stuff. So he's saying
Not
that
as much as they hated
despite that,
not as much as they hated other groups of people, but I guess
well,
yeah.
maybe, but the point is that, like, you know, presumably, like the amount of reparations, the cost of reparations paid by black Germans was equivalent to the ones paid by like white Germans, right? We didn't reduce it in any way because
I guess I just don't understand how this relates back to me having to apologize for like all of white people for the fact that like black people were
No
enslaved.
one asked you about. We're talking about the government.
Yeah, who asked you? Who asked you?
make an argument.
We're talking about the government, Tyler.
So here's the problem here, and here's just, and this is the thing. So we obviously understand what happened in America, right? We understand the racism that happened, right? But what happens the entire time was the constant gaslighting of the white populace in general. Oh, it's not that big. Oh, it's not really happening. Oh, what's this? And then the attacks that happened within the black communities. Oh, well, you know, and then when we go, hey, you know, we start to think that most white people, whatever they are, racist or whatever, oh, well, you guys are just crazy. It's like, well, there was never a point in time you guys understood collectively, like, hey, you know, a lot of bullshit happened. I don't think it happened. Let's go ahead and work on healing.
Right, so you became racist against white people.
No, that's literally nothing. I never said that. So what I never said that. I literally just said, let's focus on healing. So that has never truly.
I agree. I agree 100%. So how are we focusing on healing if I somehow have to apologize for things that my ancestors never did?
But we actually we didn't state you had to apologize. Just acknowledge what happened, and I don't think I said.
I acknowledge that black people were enslaved. It was horrible. It was racist. It was fucking awful. I wish it never happened. I think that it should be corrected, that the historical injustices still persist to this day, and that they should be addressed and corrected. I'm not seeing where the problem is.
Perfect. That's it from there. So, right. but do you think collectively? Do you think the white populace collectively has the same sentiment as you, or they go, well, you know, whatever it happened, get over it? Which one do you think is more constant?
Wait,
I think it's kind of a mixed bag, Dudding. Yeah. I agree with you there. I think it's kind of a mixed bag, right? That like some white people certainly are still very racist and, you know, believe in sort of a racial hierarchy, all the way down to like there are, you know, white people who are very sort of progressive about it and think that like, you know, there should be, you know, I don't know what you call it, like a reorganization to correct historical injustices. It's kind of a mixed bag, right? But yeah, a lot of white people, I would agree, need to.
They don't care.
Recognize what happened. Yeah.
And I understand why they don't care, because they don't have to live in that space, right? They don't have to relate to what happened in that time frame, because they're in their own bubble, right? So I understand that. But once you go, you know what, I can't relate to this. So like, again, like when you talk about the healing process, it's pretty much what black people as a whole just want from that, instead of, well, I mean, why does it have to do with me? Why didn't oh, that's not racist. Yeah, the cop called this black guy the N-word, but he wasn't racist. Like I hear things like that, right? And I'm just like, wait, what? Like, that was a racist remark. What do you mean? Oh, well, what was he doing? Yeah, his hands are up, but he kicked him in the back because he said something. Like, those things happen, and it's like, when this gaslighting continues, what do you want the opposing group that's saying, hey, like, this is a problem, what do you want them to say at that point? When you have, and just one more thing, when we have people wearing the Confederate flag saying it's heritage, forgetting that the Confederate wanted to expand slavery and continue it in Brazil and Mexico and South America and the Caribbean.
I agree with you completely.
Right? Like,
we have no disagreement.
You know what I mean? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's all I want.
I don't want an individual German teenager to be like, I'm sorry for the Holocaust to them, because you didn't do the Holocaust.
Well, then they pay reparations.
I don't want him to acknowledge the ways in which his country caused the Holocaust and to like take steps to avoid that sort of thing happening in Germany. But I don't think he should personally feel guilty for what happened. I think he can make a good argument. sort of how you should feel about these things is, did I do it? Am I morally responsible? And that's what you should feel guilty about, not about sort of abstract collectives that you can be left a part of. Like,
hang on.
abstract collectives. Hey, you guys are all humans, so you guys did the Holocaust, so apologize for it. Like,
Wait, I have an argument that targets the specific attitude of Sam's, or not attitude, that targets Sam specifically, right? Because, okay, today you're saying that, you distrust or you deny these sort of abstract collectives, right? But yesterday, right, you talked about how, you do see yourself, part of your identity is being part of, the Jewish collective, right? And not only that, you were talking about a situation where, we had, what's his name, El Normo or something, acting all, stereotypically, horribly right-wing Israeli, whatever, Zionist, right? And you're like, oh, this is the kind of guy that I hate. This kind of guy, he makes us look bad, blah blah blah, right? So there, it seems like you're kind of sort of acknowledging some level of collective responsibility, almost, right, between people of your collective. So if you think that that's possible, right, it should also be possible that you have maybe not you, I don't know what your ancestry is, but white people whose ancestors lived here and maybe even profited diffusely from black slavery, right? They also have a very small moral responsibility, at least enough moral responsibility that they should apologize.
And so with normal versus this other thing is, I'm saying normal right now has a responsibility not to promote stereotypes that will harm other Jews. That's the thing right now that he has a responsibility right now. I don't think I have a responsibility for what some ancient Jew did, or normal. It doesn't have to know what ancient Jew did. We're responsible for our own actions today.
I'm saying, I don't know, Sam, what you guys did to the Amalekites, man.
So that's right. Yeah, I'm just saying, you see yourself as part of an abstract collective, right? At least to some extent, right? And to that extent, it feels natural that you should also have some moral participation, right?
I will say this. Here's my view. I don't think we should be taking credit and blame for our ancestors' actions. I think we shouldn't be doing that. Okay? In general. However, if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna be playing that game, then we can't only look at the demerits, we also have to look at the credits. So if you're gonna look at Germany, you'd have to say, oh, Germany, yeah, they did the Holocaust, but they also had Goethe, they also had fucking Mozart, they also had
100%.
fucking thousands of years of amazing culture, they also had amazing, incredible mythology, and you have to have sort of an actual fair squaring of the balance of the German people, and you don't only focus on everything bad that they did. If I was looking at your life epoch and only focus on the worst thing you did, and not you as a totality, that would be unfair to you. Now, I don't think we should be looking at, you shouldn't be doing the thing about judging people as a whole. I don't think we should be doing it. But if you're going to do it, be fair about it. Okay. Look at the pluses and minuses.
That's fine, right? So the expectation isn't that the expectation is you can apologize, right, for your part, for your sort of diffuse part of the bad stuff, right? While also saying you're welcome for great beer and Jaeger Schnitzel and all that stuff. Yeah. But it's possible to do both, right? Apologize for one and take credit for the other. But I don't know, man. I'm not saying I necessarily believe this argument, but
So there's a few things here. I don't actually give a fuck about whether or not you apologize. This is actually a straw man, actually, which is part of the reasons why this conversation usually never gets anywhere, because people are not actually attacking the actual argument. All we are asking for is reparations. I don't give a damn if you personally apologize, and I don't give a fuck if I ever talk to you again. What? If you never said anything about reparations or the slavery, I wouldn't care less. All I care about is the reparations part. That's it, right? I'm saying this full stop. 1,000% what Germany did in terms of apologizing and doing a mea culpa for Jews, that was the right thing to do. On top of that, I don't know if you guys know this, but Jewish organizations are actually trying to go back to Germany to get more reparations. But anyway, that being said, okay, I'm assuming, Sam, you're against the Jews going to Germany to get more reparations. You're against that, Sam?
So Al, my family is Polish. We come from Poland. If you know the history of Poland, there is virtually no country in Europe that has not invaded, oppressed, attacked, murdered, enslaved, or generally been really shitty to Polish people. Who can I give my application for reparations to? Russia,
Oh,
Germany.
yeah, Poland got reparations. You didn't know this? You didn't know that? Oh, you don't know your own history?
From who? Who did they get reparations?
Oh, you don't know your own. Just Google it, bro. You don't know your own.
Sure. No, go ahead and enlighten me.
No, it's fine. Just Google. I don't care to. Just Google it. You don't know your own history, bro.
Well, I'm doubting your claim about. I mean, maybe like.
Yeah, Google it. Just Google it, bro.
Jews.
I don't have to debate about it. Just Google.
Maybe like Polish Jews, yeah.
What?
It seems like you don't know.
Bro,
either.
just Google it, man. You don't know your own history, bro. Just Google. You say you're Polish. Google your own history. You know what happened after World War II.
All right, I'll Google it, but it's probably going to be some bullshit. Huh?
Yeah, look. Again.
Are you talking about the Marshall Plan to like rebuild Europe? What are you talking about?
Bro, just Google it, bro. And by the way, just to be clear, yeah,
If you knew so much about it, you could have just told me instead of this whole dog and pony show.
What you said was false, and you need to research your own history. So here's the thing, right? Because this is the most important aspect. Tyler, I don't care about you apologizing to me. Let me be clear. No Black American cares about Tyler apologizing.
Then you shouldn't have let off the fucking conversation with those.
No one said that. No, Tyler, stop. No one said that. My claim has been one thing and one thing alone. It's been about reparations. That's it. You guys interjected this apology shit. I don't give a fuck about an apology.
Mea
I've
culpa.
never mentioned.
Mea culpa means I'm sorry. That's what mea culpas means. So when you asked about the mea culpas at first, we thought you meant a big I'm sorry versus.
You know what? For clarity's sake, I'll give you that. For clarity's sake, I'll give you that. So what I was referring to and what I made the analogy was Germany. When I said they did a full mea culpa, I'm talking about everything that they did. That's what I was referring to. But I was more specifically referring to reparations. But that being said, they did a lot more than that, right? We all know they changed their history. Like even in Germany now, like any type of Holocaust denial is like illegal. There's so many different things. Like you want to talk about clapdown on freedom of speech. There's a lot of clapdown on freedom of speech, and I'm actually okay with that. By the way, let me be clear. I'm cool with that because of the history. You know what I'm saying? So I don't. But see, I'm saying the same thing should be done here in America. It seems like you guys just disagree.
Listen, I think I think you're an evil fuck if you deny the horrors of slavery. Like if you deny that Americans did anything wrong there, that's evil. I think that we have a special responsibility to help Black people in this country. But that whether that means literal reparations checks, I don't know. A lot of this depends on the empirical question of how much will this actually help Black people. Like whether that's a good policy depends on the empirical fact of whether it would help. So I'd be down with saying, hey, let's give $20,000 to 1,000 Black people and see how it turns out, because there are sort of windfall studies, and reliably when people get windfalls, it doesn't turn into generational wealth. This is an empirical finding from the social sciences that you can look into, or if you don't believe me, I could just send you such studies on this matter. So then, if it is the case that giving windfalls doesn't reliably lead to generational wealth, then what is the thing to do to help Black people? You know.
Let me
All right, just one quick point. No, hold on, Al. Just to show that Al is completely full of shit, doesn't know what he's talking about. So I asked ChatGPT, did Polish people get reparations after World War II? Poland did not receive direct reparations from Germany after World War II in the way some other countries did. Example, the Soviet Union or Israel. I can break it down further if you'd like me to, Al.
That's incorrect, but
No, he will believe the first lines of ChatGPT when he phrases a question in a weird way. No need to get.
Tell me how to phrase it then. You keep saying this, but you never tell me how to rephrase it.
At least
Tyler, we're in the middle of a thread, Tyler. We're in the middle of a thread, and then just
Sorry.
So, Al, what do you have to say about the thing I just said about windfall studies and stuff?
I'm sorry. I want to make something. I got clarity. You're talking about in terms of how black people should receive reparations? Is that what you're referring to?
Okay. Part of the question of should we give black people reparations is, would it actually help them build generational wealth? Like, would this actually be empirically a thing that like leads to generational wealth?
Okay.
Do you think that this is okay? And I pointed to windfall studies as evidence against giving people large sums of money being the sort of thing that reliably leads to generational wealth. Like, lotto winners don't tend to keep their money, get generational wealth from that. When you give a random sample of people like a bunch of stuff, like oftentimes they get, a generation or two, they tend to even out outcomes.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Generational wealth usually dissipates by the third generation. It's almost gone by the second as well. I think the impoverished black communities or the lower incomes should be, we'll say, compensated in the sense of restructuring, or just redeveloping their infrastructure in regards to where they live and schooling as well too. I think that'll be the first line of reparations. And then when it comes to college and jobs and things like that, essentially give them a boost, right? Whether it be financial or even make them free. The college or cheap. Oh shit, my baby's coming. So to me, I think that's a pretty just a simple, a soft version of reparations. In my opinion. Now, monetary, I don't know how much more you can do with that as far as money's concerned, but you give them a gateway to college and actually help educate them in school beforehand, that's an advantage already when it comes to housing, because black people were discriminated in housing for a very long time, which white people have benefited from, and they still actually do. Give them an advantage as far as loans are concerned when it comes to homes. I mean, like things like that is, hey, white people historically benefited, where now we're even in the score. I think that's fair.
Yeah, just to answer your question, and I wanted to hear from Philip, but to answer your question, Sam, so that's kind of a paternalistic question about, okay, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to waste it? So the thing about reparations is about being a debt owed, regardless of what they do with it. That's number one. Secondly, who I think probably is the greatest economist on this particular issue is a guy named Sandy Darity. You guys can Google him, Sandy Darity. Him and his wife have done extensive work on this topic. And they kind of break down the racial wealth gap and particularly how reparations will help mollify the racial wealth gap between black and white people. But irregardless of that question, Sam, I just wanted to put that in there to directly answer your question. But irregardless of that, black people deserve it. And if we're being honest, it's not just for slavery. It's also for peonage. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's also for Jim Crow laws. Also for the chain gang. I don't know why it's slipping my mind on what the official term is of that's called. The chain gang that they did with black Americans as well. So it's not even just that. Black Americans didn't get, true liberation until 1965. You know what I'm saying? So that's an important element to this conversation.
Yeah. No. The reason why I brought up the amount of people that died that are white freeing the slaves, and the fact that there were so many people doing slavery throughout history, and it was a unique thing to end slavery. I think this is relevant to the sort of how much we think this is.
Why do you believe it was unique?
I don't think.
You said it was the
right
unique
now
thing
there's
to end slavery. You said that.
Yeah, I mean, before the British abolitionists, it was just basically unheard of. There was a few cases like Matilda of like fucking.
No, this is fake news.
Francia
Sam,
of like somewhere in France. Like,
no,
like,
Sam, this is fake news, bro. You got this is.
I've looked up.
I'll tell you. I don't even need to look it up. I'll tell you right now. So first of all, Haiti was the one that started it in the West, which was led by black people. Let's just get that out the way. Secondly, what a lot of people don't know is like there's like the Mandan Charter. You can Google this too. The Mandan Charter, the Mali Kingdom, they banned slavery. I'll give you another one. What's the name of that? The Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great, they banned slavery. Japan, they banned slavery in the 1500s. Russia banned slavery in the 1700s. Also, on the continent of Africa,
That is not remotely true.
You can put it in your ChatGPT, bro. So here's
That
another
is
thing.
not close.
Put it in your ChatGPT, dude. Hold on, Tyler. I'll tell you. What they're going to tell you is, so they banned it in the 1700s. Hold on, I'll tell you. Hold on, stop, Tyler, stop. I'll tell you what happened. So they banned slavery, but they continued to allow serfdom. Now, here's the thing. If you consider serfdom
would you call taking somebody against their will for forced labor in a location? Like, would that be considered slavery?
Bro, I'm just telling you, man. At the end of the day, that was the law. That's all.
Are you talking about Russia, Tyler?
Yeah.
All is correct.
I mean, they might have said the words, "We ban slavery," but if you continue to have slaves, you don't. You have to ban slavery.
So slavery is not a single concept, right? Like if it is part of a comparative discussions and we're comparing slavery in the United States and slavery in Russia, right? Like chattel slavery, like even after a ban, like most studies, you could find like maybe 100 people that after a ban still were in conditions that are similar to chattel slavery in the United States, right? But that was basically not the practice, right? Generally, you would still have what I would agree with you is called slaves, but if we're doing a comparative conversation, that would be incorrect, right? So again, slavery is a big chunk of all type of practices that includes domestic servants, right? And domestic servants would still remain that are slaves, right? That are still remain in Russia, but domestic slaves have nowhere near the experience of slavery in the United States. So again, if we're using comparative in a context of comparative conversations, the term has to be a little bit more defined. And for the purposes of the conversation Holly is having, right? Slavery in Russia, the one that was going on in the United States, was banned, is correct.
Yeah, so the point is, Sam, that this idea, there's a misunderstanding about the banning of slavery. In fact, there's so many different cultures. For example, in Africa, I can tell you, like the Kikover people, they never practiced slavery. Where my people come from, the Neri Kingdom, that was kind of like the seat of the Igbo Empire. They didn't practice slavery. The Crew Marines in Senegal, they didn't practice slavery. There's a lot of different places that never practiced slavery, didn't engage in slavery, or they banned slavery outright. That was not a novel or a unique thing. That's a very ahistorical approach that somehow British was the first ones that like banned slavery. Here's what I will say. I'll give the British credit for this. What the British did do that is probably different from everybody else, and Phil can probably correct me on this, is when they banned slavery, they kind of like started going around enforcing everybody else to ban slavery. Like that probably was kind of like a novelty.
So, something that a little bit confuses me is why people focus so much more on American slavery than, like, for example, Brazilian slavery, which I just looked at the numbers on this
We're
just
Americans,
now.
bro. That's why.
Brazil had 4.9 million slaves, whereas the United States had 388,000, whereas Jamaica had 1 million slaves imported. Like, there's like something strange about how much people focus on the evil of the United States when, like, the United States did not import as many people as Brazil or Jamaica. We fought a literal war, killing a huge number of our population to free them. And then, like, I don't know, this is like, I feel like this is something that's ignored when we're saying how
Should Jewish people
was.
comparatively not focus on Holocaust and focus on Somali genocide?
What do you mean?
Well, that's what you're asking.
I guess if you're asking, should American blacks focus on American blacks? Yes, they should. But I've heard people in other countries, like when I go to Europe, they talk about the brutality of American slavery, but then Brazil somehow doesn't.
How does that relate to the conversation you were having previously?
Oh, I mean, this is a larger, broader conversation about like how evil the United States is in the in the grand scheme of things. So how much should they apologize?
Well, it's basically like the oppression Olympics conversation. It's like who is oppressed most and who is most deserving of current status as, like,
that's how you're thinking about it.
Deserving of historical reparations, right? And I would say that if we're to take the overall history of human beings, there are no more oppressed and classically discriminated against people than the Jewish people. I mean, it's not even close, right? Even if you want to say that they're not discriminated against now, which I think you'd have a very hard case of making that. Like, historically, the Jewish people have been the most oppressed, discriminated, tormented group of people throughout history.
Can somebody give me the full argument? Because this is vague. Yeah.
The Congressman.
Al demands reparations. Al wants reparations. He's saying that people who are from other groups got reparations, and he feels that it's unfair that they didn't get reparations. And I'm saying that if we're talking about the level of oppression among groups of people and we're dispensing reparations according to them, like a lot of people should be getting reparations, including my ancestry, the Polish people.
They have
not gotten reparations.
As Al pointed
They have
Yeah.
not done. That is not true.
Yes, they have.
That is
they
a
have
false
been
statement.
part of
They have in
war
the 40s and the
reparations.
50s. They have
They did not.
received reparations in terms of money and in terms of various capital.
No, the Soviet Union took some reparations, and they mostly used it for industrialization.
No,
and
stop.
purposes.
Stop.
No, there was direct compensation for labor and slavery, imprisonment.
You guys are full of shit.
Other, this is
You're
like
just
basis.
uninformed and also an imp. I wanted to ask a
You
question.
can call me
Sam,
an imp as many times as you want to, but it doesn't.
Stop interrupting me, you infant.
It's not going to make me stop interrupting.
Stop interrupting me. Stop
Until you say
interrupting
something intelligent.
Stop
Jesus,
interrupting
let this
me.
guy back on stage.
Stop interrupting me. Stop
We
interrupting.
got rid of him, and now he's back.
Stop
He's
interrupting.
in the room
Stop
with his-
interrupting. Stop interrupting. Stop. Yeah, I want to ask Sam a question. Do you think that Brazilian people talk about American slavery more than they talk about Brazilian slavery?
I don't know how Brazilians talk about race issues and reparations and slavery. I don't know. I haven't been to Brazil. I don't have any Brazilian.
I mean, it could be that Americans and Europeans who know English talk about American slavery more because of that, and that Brazilian people talk more about Brazilian slavery than American slavery, and that explains it.
Yeah, could explain it. There's something there's another open question about reparations. It's just what's the word in law? Statute of limitations. No one thinks that the Chinese can ask for the Mongolians for reparations for the millions of them that were slaughtered by Genghis Khan. And no one there is a certain point where people say, you know what, it was evil, but we can't and I don't think we have a good principle on what the statute of limitations says for historical crimes. And I think American slavery is in this awkward gray area where it's close to the limit of the statute of limitations. If it happened in the 1500s, I don't think anyone would accept that you get reparations. But because it happened up until the 1800s, it's you know what I mean? It's close. It's people can know directly the names of their ancestors that were enslaved. You know, it's not a thing that's just a historical odd.
Yeah, but America was supposed to do it, right? They gave reparations to slave owners. Ulysses Grant was like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. And then they took back the land they were supposed to give to some of the freemen. So it's it was supposed to happen. You know what I mean? It was a deal that didn't.
What does the statute of limitations have to do with anything? Do you think it's a necessary component when you're evaluating justice or injustice? The statute of limitations?
Well, when it comes to reparations, that's when it's relevant.
Do you think it's a necessary component when you're evaluating injustice?
Well, no one thinks that the Chinese are owed reparations for Genghis
Can
Khan.
you just answer the question? The only reason that people wouldn't seek reparations in those type of instances is that it would just be impossible to figure out, right? And if it could be figured out, it'd just be impossible to collect. So, whatever the issues are with any other reparations issue is irrelevant to this particular case. So you've appealed to a very weak argument against
even is remote enough in history that seeking reparations for it is a little bit silly. And it's not just a matter of it's hard to figure out who was the what. The whole thing is just insanely complicated because not only is it like, you know, it's just so hard to do the counterfactual of like how would life have been different if that hadn't happened.
What? You don't think you can do financial models from that point now, assuming like a typical growth rate or a comparative growth rate, and see what would have happened had these like people been allowed to flourish economically? You think that's not like? Of course you can. Well, you're wrong. It's just
Sorry.
no. We're talking about slavery. I don't know what you're talking.
Concrete. I totally agree with you. Reparations ought to be due, but what happens in reality is that I can tell you this in the case of Germany, that paid reparations to everyone, the Jews and the Sinti and Roma, etc. The problem is that the compensation that is paid, or to the Herero people in Namibia, as well, another example, the compensation that is paid is such an insult to the victims that, no matter how you go about this, it's always going to end up pissing people off even more.
So what? That's not an argument. What else you got?
What do you got, Concrete? Did you just come to spam like you always do? Think of one word, then the next word a second later, and then string together a sentence?
How did you get on stage? I didn't invite you on stage. What the fuck?
He's obsessed too. It's crazy. Thank you for that.
What the fuck is that even?
I think your room's open to anybody who wants to go.
How the fuck did that happen?
Wait, it's one of those kinds of rooms right now?
Did you let me up?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I guess I think America should do things specifically to help black people in this country. It was just special focus on black people should probably be made because of the crimes done. So special focus, yes. And whether or not that should be done just by giving them money, I think probably not because of like windfall studies. But
Bitch, quit fucking speaking to me, you dirtball, bitch. I told. Well, I was there. Like, I was there, so I did take the pictures of this. So the pictures would be coming from, like, me. So it was me and him, we were talking on social media, and then he went on to a different social media platform. I don't know if you know what it's called. It's called Discord.
I've heard of Discord, yeah.
Yeah, so then he got on Discord and was... Hello?
We hear you, Zach. We're listening to
Oh, God. This guy's back.
I'm back and I'm better than ever before. Funnier than you've ever heard me before. Auntie knows I just did my whole routine. Abby, don't dox me, Abby.
He posts on YouTube. Be careful.
I like to hear that shit. I like to hear the karaoke too. Do y'all sing with the music, just the beat, or like?
Every option. You know what's funny? Yo, Butcher got me off guard. You know what songs Butcher was singing on karaoke night?
Halo.
No.
What he was singing?
Rock songs.
That's what's up. No. I don't
It just caught me off guard. He
Yeah.
was singing pop rock songs.
He was over there like, pour some sugar on me.
When Butcher puts up his old
He was like,
he has a million piercings and a million earphones. A million
So he had a million what?
piercings. A million piercings. He, like,
Oh shit.
that's not shocking.
Oh, so he dead ass was a punk dude?
I'm telling you, bro.
He says he was in gangs and stuff, but he looks like I would have. Yeah.
Nobody say you say he was in a gang?
He was never no gangs.
Yeah, them
you think stacking means?
You said stacking?
Yeah.
Gang gang sign?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So everybody from the east said that it's throwing up gang signs. Butcher says that no, stacking is only in Chicago. It only exists in Chicago. Stacking means showing your rank as a GD member. I said, yeah, maybe. That's what I said. Maybe that's the origin of it. Maybe, I don't know. But I said stacking means throwing up gang signs everywhere else. I said in Miami we call it stacking. In New York they call it stacking. New Jersey, New York, all the battle rappers call it stacking. This is a common thing. And he goes, no. That means showing up your rank in Chicago.
It means rank.
It's showing up your rank in GD specifically. The GD, Gangster Disciples in that specific game.
So he's saying like, so it's I don't get it.
Look. So King came in yesterday, and then Butcher was like, "Yo, King, what does stacking mean?" And King said the same thing. He said it means showing your rank in the GD. And I'm like, okay. Maybe it's over there.
Oh wow.
Then I put it in ChatGPT. I said, what is the terminology used for throwing up gang signs? And then it said it's called stacking. And then I was like, and then the whole room went against me. And they were like, oh my God, look at Malibu's most wanted. Look at Malibu's most wanted. I'm like, wait. You guys appeal to ChatGPT at every turn. But now
I didn't know that. So what is so stacking means in Chicago? It means
it's showing your rank. Showing your rank.
But they
as a gangster disciple.
They're using their fingers though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference?
No, they said that stacking doesn't exist for any other gang. For example,
no, that's cat.
Hey,
no, what the
yes,
fuck?
I know. This is what they said. They said Bloods don't stack, Crips don't stack. No other gang besides GDs can stack. I said that's not true. I said every gang calls it stacking. I said I grew up
It's
around
probably
Pyru.
younger people, maybe. They don't know.
I said I grew up around Pyru, nigga. And all the Pyru niggas that grew up with me all stack. We all stack.
Yeah. On the back of the bus.
Hey, I told Butcher, I said, Butcher, I'm the only one in this room that can probably stack right now. I can stack.
Right.
And I'm like, once again, this is what we call it. And he was like, no, stacking is only in Chicago for GDs.
I'll just let them have it until they run into a pie room. I don't fucking know. That's Chicago shit.
What's up, blood?
Yo,
What you was saying, Mike?
Yo, Sue, whoop.
It's just funny because we guys are talking about still. Are you there?
Yeah, man.
What do you think stacking is when you hear it? What does it remind you of?
It's an armbar defense or a triangle defense. Sound gay.
Yeah. No, stacking is when you know, like that big brother position where you fold the legs over their head. You know what I'm talking about? So in jiu-jitsu, when you stack someone, when you're stacking them, it's basically like you're
You put your weight on top of them, right?
Yeah, you're folding their knees over their head.
Yeah.
So you guys are talking. It's like with context matters, dude. It's funny.
Yeah.
Stacking. I don't see how gang sign. I don't even see it. Like, how does that even make sense?
Because you
throw
ever
your
seen
hands
Naruto?
over your hands. It looks like a jutsu. It's
Yeah, you ever seen Naruto, Mike?
Oh, I see what you're. So it's like compiling.
So-
Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Right, and then it is a ranking thing where the first sign is probably your gang, and then it's the set under that gang, right? Then it's your region, then it's your rank, whether you're a soldier, whether you're da-da-da, and then you probably have your own call sign that you add to the end. You feel me?
Yeah.
Or it might be different by regions, but I think that's why they call it stacking. I don't fucking know.
dog. I saw this lady start doing sign language, but I didn't know she was there, and I thought she was banging. I was like, oh shit, what the fuck? But she was literally just speaking sign language. I was like, but nah,
I actually think that shit was cool. That shit looked cool as fuck. I never stacked, but I mean, niggas always tried to stack. You feel me? You always got that cousin that's in a gang or some shit that be teaching you that shit. But outside of that, it looked like a fucking handshake or something that you doing with yourself. But yeah, I I think what it is younger people, they think that things are just exclusive to their areas, and people that don't travel. You know what I'm saying? Not saying Butcher don't travel, maybe he does, right? But people that are from and grew up on their block, they tend to think certain things. Because before I left New York, I was very close-minded, bro. Swear to God. I thought New York, at fucking 9, 10 years old, I thought New York was the capital of the planet, like Earth. I thought we were the capital of all the countries. You feel what I'm saying? Like, that's how close-minded people be when they're in a certain area for their whole life.
That makes sense. What made you change that thought? For the moment.
Moving, like, you move and you think you're from the hardest place on the planet, and then you move somewhere and it's like, damn, this shit fucking tough too. Like, what the fuck? They move down south and you're like, oh shit. So moving, that's one thing, and I think just being around different people. After a while of just breaking down stereotypes and shit like that, like you run into somebody that's just against what you, like your mother told you people are like, or you know, it's like you start to be like, all right, maybe there's more to life than what the fuck I think I know.
That's true.
Said fought the Civil War to free black people. That's what he said, right? I said, so how do we know that, right? So now you're pointing me to a letter. The letter is insufficient to make Sam's argument, right? The overreach was not in my demand for evidence. The overreach was in Sam's statement, right?
Which was supported by an underreach, and then a complaining and crying for sufficiency.
Become extremely plausible that this trip between the maternity ward and the crematorium is what there is to life. And we still have, going into our common sense, the 19th century myth, which succeeded the ceramic myth in Western history. I call it the myth of the fully automatic model of the universe. Namely, that it's stupid, it's blind force, Haeckel's gyration or fortuitous congress of atoms is of the same vintage as Freud's libido, the blind surge of lust at the basis of human psychology. But when you consider this attitude, what is the poetic counterpart? Man is a little germ that lives on an unimportant rock ball that revolves about an insignificant star on the outer edges of one of the smaller galaxies. No, I want to put down that one.
You want to do it,
But on the other hand, if you think about that for a few minutes, I am absolutely amazed to discover myself on this rock ball, rotating around a spherical fire. It's a very odd situation. And the more I look at things, I cannot get rid of the feeling that existence is quite weird. I know that, see, a philosopher is a sort of intellectual yokel who gawks at things that sensible people take for granted. And sensible people, existence is nothing at all. I mean, it's just basic, just go on and do something. See, this is the current movement in philosophy. Logical analysis says you mustn't think about existence. It's a meaningless concept. Therefore, philosophy has become the discussion of trivia. And philosophical journals is now as satisfactorily dull as any other kind of purely technical inquiry. No good philosopher lies awake nights worrying about the destiny of man and the nature of God and all that sort of thing. Because a philosopher today is a practical fellow who comes to the university with a briefcase at 9 and leaves at 5. He does philosophy during the day, which is discussing whether certain sentences have meaning and if so what. And then he would, as William Earl said in a very funny essay, he would come to work in a white coat if he thought he could get away with it. Problem is, he's lost his sense of wonder. Wonder is like, in modern philosophy, something you mustn't have. It's like enthusiasm in 18th century England. It's very bad form. But you see, I don't know what question to ask when I wonder about the universe. It isn't a question that I'm wondering about, it's a feeling that I have. Imagine, if you had an interview with God, everybody was going to have an interview with God, and you were allowed to ask one question. What would you ask? And don't rush into it. You will soon find that you have no idea what to ask. Because I cannot formulate the question that is my wonder. The moment my mouth opens to utter it, I suddenly find I'm talking nonsense. But that should not prevent wonder from being the foundation of philosophy. Well, as Aristotle said, wonder is the beginning of philosophy. Because it strikes you that existence is very, very strange. And then more so when this so-called insignificant little creature has inside his skull a neurological contraption that is able to center itself in the midst of these incredible expanse of galaxies and start measuring the whole thing. That is quite extraordinary. But then furthermore, when you realize that in the world...
Last time I did check, there was only one race of humans on this planet, right?
We don't research self-evident. Go, you know this. You know the thing.
Hey, bro, I heard you earlier. You know what I mean? From earlier? They kicked you instantly. They hated you.
We got the clown in the house. Watch out.
Yeah, God has a addictive for everyone. Listen,
Dude, hey,
Just as pretty, just as talented as white kids.
it was hilarious. He got so good.
Sasha was like, God has a dick for everyone.
kicked him.
You can't go to a 7-Eleven without seeing an Indian. And he's telling the truth, though. He wasn't lying. I mean, let's be fucking honest. He was telling the truth.
I was in a room earlier. It was like probably like 8 knocks, and he came in and like just crushed. Everybody got so mad, and I was laughing.
Who, me?
The whole comedy. He came in, and I was trying to go against him, just like trying to keep my composure.
He was, he comes in, it's like this, dude. No, sorry, I mean this. It's like this.
Dude, he came in, they all broke down. It was hilarious. They're like, get the fuck out of here. I was joining them, and I was trying to not laugh so bad.
They're so unfair.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Tom, he's probably capable of anybody on this app. That's why that whole, incognito thing is pretty good. For me, man, I might be close second, maybe, because I disagree with people. I don't total line with people,
Yes, I've seen you from time to time as well. Yeah, just from random rooms. I think that you do what I do. I kind of just go from random rooms from time to time and just kind of see if people are cool with it, if they're not cool with it, I kind of talk shit. That's what I do. But hey,
My favorite are the black rooms that, they're having an interesting conversation. Join in. Then they figure out that you're white. And they're like, oh, whitey. It's like, hey, all right, you have to go there. I don't have to go there. I want to go over there.
don't ever say that. See, like, I got them against the fence whether I'm white or black or not. Because it's always, are you white? I'm like, no. They're like, are you black? I'm like, I'm something. And then like, half the black girls are like, no, he's black. He's black. The other ones are like, no, he's white. He's white.
Yeah,
like,
you can tell by their
Where there are no eyes, the sun would not be light. And that in a world where there were no soft skins, rocks would not be hard, nor in a world where there were no muscles would they be heavy? Existence is relationship, and you are smack in the middle of it. So, there is obviously a place in life for a religious attitude in the sense of awe, astonishment at existence. And that is also a basis of respect for existence. We don't have very much of it in this culture, even though we call it materialistic. A materialist is a person who loves material. And I suppose in the Christian tradition and in the Jewish one would say that the Lord God is the greatest materialist. Because, you know, as William Temple once said, God is interested in many other things than religion. Were God only interested in religion, the world would consist of nothing but church buildings and Bibles and clergymen. That would be pretty boring. So, in the culture that we call materialistic today, we are, of course, bent on the total destruction of material and its conversion into junk and poisonous gas as quickly as possible. This is not a materialistic culture because it has no respect for material. And respect is in turn based on wonder, on feeling the marvel of just an ordinary pebble in your fingers. So I'm afraid, you see, for the God is dead theology, that it will sort of drift off into secular do-goodery in the name of Jesus. And this is, I think, where we can be strongly revivified and stimulated by the introduction into our spiritual life of certain things that are oriental. Now you see, it must be understood that the crux of the Hindu and Buddhist disciplines is an experience, not a theory, not a belief. If we say that a religion is a combination of creed, code, and cult, in other words, this is true of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and if they are religions, Buddhism is not. Because the creed is a revelation, a revealed symbolism of what the universe is about, and you are commanded to believe in it on the divine authority. The code is the revealed will of God for man, which you are commanded to obey, and the cult is the divinely revealed form of worship which you must practice. Commandment, because God is boss, is ruler, King of kings and Lord of lords. But the disciplines, say, of yoga in Hinduism, or of the various forms of Buddhist meditation, do not require you to believe anything. And they have no commandments in them. They do indeed have precepts, but they are really vows which you undertake and on your own responsibility, not in obedience to anybody. They are experimental techniques for changing consciousness. And the thing they are mainly concerned with is helping human beings to get rid of the hallucination that each one of us is a skin-encapsulated ego. You know, a little source, a little man inside your head, located between the ears and behind the eyes, who is the source of conscious attention and voluntary behavior. Most people, you know, don't really think that they are anything but that, and that the body is a thing you have. Mummy, who would I have been if my father had been someone else? See, the parents give you the body and you pop the soul into it at some period, conception or parturition, nobody could ever decide. And this attitude stays with us, that we are something in a body, that we have a body, and we are not it. So we experience the beating of the heart as something that happens to me, whereas talking or walking is something that I do. Don't you beat your heart? The language won't allow you to think that. It's not customary to say so. How do you think? How do you manage to be conscious? You don't know. How do you open and close your hand? Do you know? If you're a physiologist, you may be able to say, but that doesn't help you to open and close your hand any better than I do. See, I know how to do it, but I can't put it into words. In the same way, the Hindu God knows how he creates this whole universe, because he does it. But he wouldn't explain it. That would be stupid. You might as well try to drink the Pacific Ocean with a fork.
gets enlightened and he recovers from the hallucination of being a skin-encapsulated ego and finds out that central to his own self is the eternal self of the universe. And you go up to him and say, well, how do you do all this? He says, well, just like you open and close your hand. And because we're all dead. Whenever a questioner used to come to Sri Ramana, the great Hindu sage who died a few years ago, they said to him, Master, was I living before in a previous incarnation? And if so, who was I? And he would say, who is asking the question? Who are you? And a spiritual teacher in both Hinduism and Buddhism is a kind of, well, what he does to awaken you, to get you over the hallucination of being the skin-encapsulated ego, he bugs you in a certain way. He has a funny look in his eye, as if to say, come off it, Shiva, I know what you're doing. He said, what, me? He looks at you in a funny way. And finally, you get feeling that he sees all the way through you. And therefore that all your selfish and evil thoughts and nastinesses are transparent to this gaze. And then you have to try and alter them. He suggests, you see, that you practice the control of the mind, that you become desireless. You give up selfish desire so as to cease to be a skin-encapsulated self. Then you may have some success in quieting your mind and in concentrating. But then after that, he'll throw a curve at you, which is, but aren't you still desiring not to desire? Why are you trying to be unselfish? Well, the answer is I want to be on the side of the big battalions. I think it's going to pay better to be unselfish than to be selfish. Well, Luther saw that. Augustine saw that. But there it is. Because what he's done, you see, he's beginning to make you see the unreality, the hallucinatory quality of a separate self. This has merely conventional reality in the same sense as lines of latitude and longitude, the measurements of the clock. That's why one of the meanings of Maya, illusion, is measurement. Things, for example, are measurements. They are units of thought, like inches are units of measurement. There are no things in physical nature. How many things is a thing? It's any number you want. Because a thing is a think, a unit of thought. It's as much of reality as you can catch hold of in one idea. So, when this realization of the hallucination of the separate self comes about, it comes about through discovering that your alleged separate self can't do anything. It can't improve itself, either by doing something about it or by doing nothing about it. Both ways are based on illusion. You see, this is what you have to do to get people out of hallucinations. You make them act consistently on the suppositions of the hallucination. People who believe that the earth is flat cannot possibly be talked into seeing that it's round, because they know it's flat. Because can't you see? So what you do is this, you say, let's go and look over the edge. Wouldn't that be fun? But you see, to be sure that we do get to the edge, we must be very careful not to walk in circles. So you perform a discipline. You go steadily and rigorously westwards along latitude 40 or something. And then when you get back to the place where you started, he is convinced that the world is at least cylindrical. By experiment. By reductio ad absurdum of his premises. And so in the same way, the guru, whether Hindu or Buddhist, performs a reductio ad absurdum on the premise of the skin-encapsulated ego. Well, what happens then? You might imagine from garbled accounts of Eastern mysticism that one thereupon disappears forever into an infinite sea of faintly mauve jello. become so lost to the world and entranced that you forget your name, address, telephone number, and function in life. Then nothing of the kind happens. The state of mystical illumination, although it may, in its sudden onset, be accompanied by a sensation of tremendous luminescence and transparency, as you get used to it, it's just like everyday life. Here are the things that you formerly thought were separate individuals, and here is you, who you formerly thought was merely confronting these other people. When the great Dr. D.T. Suzuki was asked, what is it like to be enlightened, he said it's just like ordinary everyday experience, except about 2 inches off the ground. Because what is altered is not the way your senses perceive. What is altered is what you think about it. Your definitions of what you see. Your evaluation of it. So when you don't cling to it, when you have no longer a hostile attitude to the world because you know the world is you, it is. I mean, let's take it from the point of view of biology. If I describe the behavior of a living organism, I cannot possibly describe that behavior without simultaneously describing the behavior of the environment. So that I discover that I don't describe organisms in environments. I describe a unified field of behavior called an organism environment. An awkward word. But there it is. The environment doesn't push the organism around. The organism doesn't push the environment around. They are two aspects or poles of the same process. And so you have to understand that this attitude towards nature, seeing the fundamental unity of the self which manifests it all, is not an attitude, as missionaries are apt to suppose, which denies the value of differentiation. You must understand the principle of what are called identical differences. Take a coin. The head side is a different side from the tail side, and yet the two are inseparable. Take the operation of buying and selling. Selling is a different operation from buying, but you can't buy unless somebody sells at the same time and vice versa. This is what is meant by the underlying unity of opposites, what is called in Hinduism Advaita, or non-duality, or when the Chinese use the word Tao to designate the way of operation of the positive and negative principles, the yang and the yin. It is not a unity that annihilates differences, but a unity which is manifested by the very differentiations that we perceive. Just as it's all polar. It's like the two poles of a magnet. Different, but yet one magnet. So when we say, Oriental monism is a point of view towards life which merges everything into a kind of sickening goo. This is terribly unfair. It just isn't so. If you argue that the sort of doctrine that everybody is really the Godhead destroys the possibility of real love between individuals, because you have to be definitely other than I if I'm to love you. Otherwise it's all self-love. Well, that argument collapses in view of the doctrine of the Trinity. If the three persons are one God, then they can't love each other by the same argument. Hinduism simply uses the idea which is of the Christian Trinity, only it makes it a multi-Trinity instead of a three-one. That's all. Of course, the thorn in the flesh is always in approaching a doctrine which seems to be monistic or pantheistic. What about evil? Are we to make the ground of being responsible for evil? And we don't want to do that because we want to keep God's skirts clean. In spite of the fact that our own Hebrew Bible says, I am the Lord, there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And haven't you heard the story about the Yetzer Hara? That according to Jewish theology, the Lord God implanted in Adam at the beginning of time a thing called the Yetzer Hara. It means the wayward spirit. I call it the element of irreducible rascality. And it's very necessary to have this in order to be human. You see, how it was done was this prohibition not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. That was the one sure way of getting it eaten. But of course, when the Lord God accused Adam and said, "You've been eating of that tree I told you not to eat," and he passed the buck to Eve and said, "This woman that thou gavest me, she tempted me, and I did eat." He looked at Eve. Now, what about it? She said, "Well, it was the serpent." He looked at the serpent. The serpent didn't say anything. Because he knew too much, and he wasn't going to give away the show. Who is it that sits at the left hand of God? We know who sits at the right hand. It's hushed up, because that's the side where the district attorney sits. And in the book of Job, of course, you know, Satan is the district attorney at the court of heaven. He's the prosecutor. He's a faithful servant of the court. Because, you see, the whole problem is, it would be very bad indeed if God were the author of evil and we were his victims. That is to say, if we keep the model of the king of the universe and the creatures are all subjects of the king, then a God who is responsible for evil is being very unkind to other people. But in this theory, God is not another person. There are no victims of God. He's never anything but his own victim. You are responsible. And if you want to stay in the state of illusion, stay in it. But you can always wake up. I want to start out by explaining quite carefully what I mean by mythology. The word is very largely used today to mean fantasy, or something that is definitely not fact. And it's used, therefore, in a pejorative or put-down sense, so that when you call something a mythology or a myth, it means you don't think much of it. But the word is used by philosophers and scholars in quite another sense, where to speak in the language of myth is to speak in images rather than to speak in what you might call plain language, or the language of fact, descriptive language. You can sometimes say more things with images than you can say with concepts. As a matter of fact, images are really at the root of thinking. One of the basic ways in which we think is by analogy. We say a certain thing is, we think of the life of human beings might be compared to the seasons of the year. Now, there are many important differences between a human life and the cycle of the seasons, but nevertheless, one talks about the winter of life or the spring of life, and so the image becomes something that is powerful in our thinking. Furthermore, when we try to think philosophically and think in abstract concepts about the nature of the universe, we often do some very weird things. You see, it's considered nowadays naive to think of God as an old gentleman with a long white beard who sits on a golden throne and is surrounded with winged angels. And we say now no sensible person could possibly believe that God is just like that. Therefore, if you get more sophisticated, you believe that God is, say, if you follow St. Thomas Aquinas, you think of God as necessary being. Or if you think with Buddhists, you think of God as the undifferentiated void, or as the infinite essence. But actually, however rarefied those concepts sound, they are just as anthropomorphic, that is to say, just as human, and in the form of the human mind, as the picture of God as the old gentleman with the white beard, or the Lord in green pastures wearing a top hat and smoking a cigar. Because all ideas about the world, whether they be religious, philosophical, or scientific, are translations of the physical world and of worlds beyond the physical into the terms and shapes of the human mind. So there is no such thing as a non-anthropomorphic idea. The advantage of Delord in talking about these things is that nobody takes it quite seriously. Whereas the undifferentiated aesthetic continuum could be taken seriously. And that would be a great mistake. Because you would think you understood what the ultimate reality is. So I'm going to use very largely naive mythological terms to discuss these matters. And if you are a devout Christian, you mustn't be offended by this, because you will naturally think that you have risen now to a more superior idea of these things than these very simple terms derived from the imagery of the Bible and of the medieval church. But I shall discuss Hinduism in the same way. And I'm going to begin with Hinduism, to give you a sort of fundamental account of what it's all about. I imagine some of you were present at the lecture I gave in the university on religion and art. And I discussed the view of the world as drama. Now I want to go more thoroughly into this, because the Hindu view of the universe is fundamentally based on the idea of drama. That is to say, of an actor playing parts. The basic actor in this drama is called Brahma. And this word comes from the Sanskrit root, which means to swell or expand. And the Hindu idea of Brahma, the supreme being, is linked with the idea of the self. In you, deep down, you feel that there is what you call I. And this word, when you say I am, that in Sanskrit is aham, A-H-A-M. And everybody, when asked what his name is, replies, I am I. I am I myself. And so there is the thought that in all life, the self is the fundamental thing. It means the center. And so the Brahma is looked upon as the self and center of the whole universe. And the idea fundamentally is that there is only one self. And each one of us is that self. Only it radiates like a sun or a star. And just as the sun has innumerable rays, or just as you can focus the whole sun through a magnifying glass and concentrate it on one point, or as an octopus has many tentacles, or as a sow has many tits. So in this way, Brahma is wearing all faces that exist, and they are all the masks of Brahma. Not only human faces, but animal faces, insect faces, vegetable faces, and mineral faces. Everything that there is the Supreme Self playing at being that. Because the fundamental process of reality is, according to the Hindu myth, hide and seek, that or lost and found. That is the basis of all games. And it's true, isn't it, that when you start to play with a baby, and you take out the book, and you hide your face behind it, and then you peek out at the baby, and then you peek out this way, the baby begins to giggle. Because a baby, being near to the origins of things, knows intuitively that hide and seek is the basis of it all. And children like to sit in a high chair, and they have something on the tray, and make it gone. And then somebody picks it up and puts it back, and they make it gone again, you see. Now then, that's a very sensible arrangement. It is called, in Sanskrit, it's called lila. And that means sport or play, but the play is hide and seek. Now, let's go a little bit into the nature of hide and seek, because don't let me insult your intelligence by telling you some of the most elementary things that exist. Really everything is a question of appearing and disappearing. For example, if I sit next to a beautiful girl and I put my hand on her knee and leave it there, after a while she'll cease to notice it. But if I gently pat her on the knee, because now I'm there and now I'm not, it will be more noticeable. So all reality is a matter of coming and going. It is vibration. It is waves of positive and negative electricity. It's up and down. And things like wood appear to be solid because in much the same way that the blade of a fast-moving electric fan appears to be solid. So the vast agitation that is going on in the electrical structure of solid things is a terrific agitation, which will not allow the agitation called my hand to go through it. Other kinds of agitation, like X-rays, are so constructed that they can get through. So everything is basically coming and going. For example, sound. If you listen to sound and slow sound down in the same way you see you can sound down in the same way as you can use a magnifying glass to look at the structure of something visible. And as when you look at the magnifying glass, you find that solid things are full of holes. So when you magnify sound, you find it's full of silences. Sound is sound hyphen silence. There is no such thing as pure sound, just as there is nothing as no such thing as pure something. Something always goes together with nothing. Solids are always found in spaces, and no spaces are found except where there are solids. You might imagine there being a space without any solid in it, but you will never, never encounter one, because you will be there in the form of a solid to find out about it. You see, they go together, these things. The solid and the space, the positive and the negative, the here we are and here we aren't, go together in the same way as the back and front of a coin. And you can't have a coin that has a back and no front. The only thing that gets anywhere near that is a Mobius strip, which is a mathematical conceit, in which the back and the front are the same. But that only shows in a more vivid way how backs and fronts go together. Now, so the whole thing is based on that, you see. Now, once we've got this game, that there are two different things, but they're really the same. See, the Brahma is what is basic. But the Brahma manifests itself in what are called the Dvandva. And that means the pairs of opposites. Duality. Dva, you see, is the root of the Sanskrit word for two, which becomes duo in Latin and dual in English. Two is the basis. You can't go behind two, because one has an opposite. The opposite of one is none. Now, what is in common between one and none? No one can say. Shh. You can't mention it. It's called Brahma. It's sometimes called Om. O-M. And, but you can't really think of what is in common between black and white. There is obviously a conspiracy between black and white, because they're always found together. Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle. See, there's always an agreement underlying this difference. But that is what we call implicit. The difference is explicit. So the first step in what you might call the hide phase of the game of hide and seek is to lose sight of the implicit unity between black and white, between yes and no, between existence and non-existence. And that losing sight of the fundamental unity is called Maya.